So today's class, because I just got back from walking Luna over here, who's going to do the cool cat Shavasana challenge the whole time. I decided I would record and provide a cooling yoga practice with an emphasis on lower back care and some knee care as well. I have 3 suggestions for you. And I know a couple of you are pretty far away from your refrigerator, freezer, but if you have any kind of fan-like item, even if it's a piece of paper, that's suggestion 1, just to have a fan, kind of a folded newspaper near you. Suggestion number 1 is that. Suggestion number 2 is on your way to the freezer, have a tiny little hand towel or washcloth and moisten that and toss it in the freezer. And then take a couple of ice cubes in a bowl and bring it back to your mat. So that's going to be your mindful walking to and from the freezer. And we'll get started when I see everyone back at their spot. Any questions?
Can an ice pack work?
Ice pack will probably sustain longer than the ice cubes. Just make sure that whatever you're using, it's going to sweat a little bit. So put it in a container and maybe even another towel under it so you don't get a wet spot on your floor. Okay. Ice pack is really wise. Be right back myself. You had the shortest commute to the freezer, didn't you? And perhaps very ready with that ice pack. Good call. Good call.
I'm always nervous that they're gonna eat the candles or mostly just sniff them, but I had to blow them out when I've been doing deep meditation because I was worried they're gonna knock them over.
Meditating with one eye on the cat and one eye on the candle.
Yes. But I find crystals all over my carpet because they play with them and then they take them and then carry them somewhere.
That is fabulous. Hide and seek, huh?
Oh yes. Yeah, we love that game.
I know the other 2 have are in their upstairs yoga space. So simultaneously, you must have the same number of steps. Okay. So for our opening meditation, ask to sit as comfortably as you can. And if you're warming up on a gentle morning or midday, just sitting with your body, perhaps giving space between the knees and the calves and bringing your soles of your feet together. Now, what you might do here, and that's why the blanket can be helpful. If your hips aren't quite warmed up here, you could even double up the blanket fold or sit upon a blanket. Once a block is set down, a blanket underneath it. So you're just making a taller and taller seat so your hips are comfortable to do this. Yeah, the taller for my morning hips, it feels great. And you could also do this leaning up against a wall or the edge of a bed. Now, this is where it gets a little fun. If you don't have a fan, you're welcome just to use a hand. I learned this in very crowded summer subways when I lived in Japan. But just by taking your hand with, say, one hand to the other, working as a fan or an actual fan, that's going to have one cooling effect. Now, the second is to take the ice pack, the ice cube, or the bowl that you have your ice in and place it, ooh, between the soles of your feet. Whether you've got socks on or not, that's your call. And you want to make sure that you have, ooh, the ability to breathe into that coolness. And just see if we can start with the coolest place you feel in your body. Do you want to keep fanning as a meditative movement, or is your sole of your foot more than enough? And even though there's a little bit of movement in one hand, welcome to close your eyes. And that allows us to have this interoceptive quality of what thoughts and feelings, along with the external, the proprioception, where do I feel the coolest spot? Like I said, this is going to be our yoga practice for the cool cats, the cool kids, and the resting dogs. So let's shift from, if you are still fanning your hand, just lower the fan down and place the palms up, and knuckles can rest upon the inner thighs or inner knees. Maybe it's even the wrists on the inner knees. And we're going to practice one more cooling breath. We'll come back to this towards the end. It's an inhale through the nose, as if you're blowing through a straw, or maybe blowing on a dandelion, but not towards your neighbor's yard. Just letting the out breath go out through pursed lips, like a blowing out a birthday candle, or in through the nose and out with a. And rather than an ujjayi sound, perhaps it creates a soft little whistle, or like you're hearing air currents coming to you. And since we did think of this as a possibility of blowing dandelion seeds, those little parachute poofs, perhaps that allows you to take an intention and let that seed be planted here, in through the nose, out with a. Try that 2 more times. One more, in through the nose, out with a. Oh, there's a good chance that the exchange of coolness to warmth in your soles of your feet, if you want to change out the position of that bowl, ice cube, or ice pack, and just I'm circling my bowl around so I can touch cooler parts of the bowl. And we're just going to lightly take our hands and massage the kneecaps. Just rub them. I sometimes affectionately call this the crystal bowl rubbing, and we're hoping and aiming for a long and healthy relationship with these legs, these knees. And whatever they might ask of you, whether you modify or skip any of the practices, what you might do is take your thumbs, 2 thumbs up, and just lightly press to the inner part of the knee. And the terrain here of the kneecap, the patella, and where the thighs connect to the kneecap, sometimes that can give us some information about the connective tissues around the knees. You're just rubbing in circular motion. And I have one knee that's more tender than the other. What about you? Do you find any places where the thumbs want to add less pressure or more? Could continue circular movements or pressing inward. If you roll into bony structure, you want to press less. If you find some tender ligament joints or muscles, then you might add a little more of that pressure. Let's swirl the thumbs in very intuitive ways around the inner knees and the inner lower thighs. And now those forefingers on the outside of the kneecaps, they can start to also add some circular movements. And all we're doing here is while we're cooling our feet, we're increasing some blood flow in the knees. I'm going to invite you, after a couple more breaths, to just put your ice, pack ice cubes off to a safe place. That might become Luna's drinking water shortly. My feet didn't touch her ice cubes. And then help your knees come on up. We're just going to rub down from the knees to the shins, all the way maybe to the tops of the feet for some. And what we're doing here is, again, just increasing the blood flow. But also if you're in sweatpants or shorts, you get to make connection, the hands. And when we increase circulation, sometimes there can be a tingly feeling there, maybe not necessarily cooling. Now, this is a placement of our feet where our calves are fairly relaxed. So you can take your hands and press into those relaxed calf muscles. Sometimes that's a familiar feeling if you have had massage done. You can also take your thumbs and just press into the back of the knee and work your way down into those relaxed calves by going down into the center line. I'm going to turn around and do a brief forward fold, but you'd still be in that seated pose. You just want to press to the back of the knee and work your way down towards the Achilles heel. The closer you get to the tendons of the ankle, the less pressure you want to add, the more into the relaxed muscle you can offer a little more pressure. All these self-massage allow us just to stay in a cooling spot, but allowing us to wake up our legs. This is particularly good for anyone who's traveled cross country or planning a long trip. Just to gently squeeze, press. And we're going to do one last thing here, and this is more for the lower back. I'll give you one more angle here. Just keeping the feet in front, and now round in the back and create a tiny bit of tailbone tuck. If you're on a block, make sure you don't roll off. And that's going to allow your forehead to come down towards the knees, and then you're opening up the back of the neck. So you've created more of a cat arch in your back spine. I told you it was for the cool cats. And just press into any of those tender spots you found in the back of the calf, or grand finale, 4 fingers scoop into the back of the knee. And just take 3 breaths. If you are feeling any warmth, like my underside of my kneecaps are already kind of warm, you can do that cooling breath again, in through the nose and out with a in through the nose and out with that wishy, whispery. One more time, in through the nose, dandelion seed pressure of the wind. Unround the back. Go ahead and lengthen the legs in front. You can stay seated up taller, or just flush out the legs in the middle of your mat. Anyone have any questions or check in or want to share how their back of their calves are feeling?
It's good.
That's good. What was the last part?
They're warmer.
They're warmer, right? Yeah, even the back of my knees, even though I weren't squeezing them in, somehow they've got that blood flow circulation. We're just going to flush the legs out in front, and we can do a little tingly sensation with our fingertips, just as if you're trying to tickle your own, in front of your own legs, and only reach down as far as you can. So it could be the tips of the fingernails, unless there's particular curious cats, they might follow your movements here. I'm just going to brush down. Again, the idea is to increase blood flow and O2 intake, just breathing in through the nose. And you're welcome to make that ujjayi sound if it's not too warming today. And the fingertips can reach down. They may only go as far as the shins. They may only go as far as the ankles. And just go about 5 more times. 5, 4. And notice this is a reaching forward. So we're using some back muscles. When we come back up, engage core. 3, 2. And we get a little head to toe, at least the head gets as close to toes as possible. Stay in a forward fold. Since this is our first forward fold, it's not uncommon to give the knees a bend. Press lightly into the heels, and we come forward a tiny bit more. Now, depending on lower back needs, some people find forward folding or lengthening the back to be helpful of releasing some pain. But we don't want to overstay our welcome in a warm-up pose. Just take about 3 more breaths, knowing the option to come out of the pose is always there. So we're going to lift up. And then with a blanket underneath your head, if you happen to use a slight pillow, we're going to roll our body down onto our backs, keeping the knees bent. We're going to take, perhaps, if you did gather up a fan, you're welcome to wave your face. If you're just using your hand, kind of cup the hand like you. That's how learn how to first swim. Make a little cup so even when you catch the air current, it just blows into the opposite hand or even maybe the nape of the neck. I prefer a folded newspaper or an actual fan. It does do the trick. The second thing while we're setting up our upper body is to walk our feet further away. So again, we create space between the hamstrings and the calves. And you're welcome to place that fan down and open the arms up into a T. Now, depending on the space, I've got a wall here to my left side. It might be that the elbows bend a little bit. And we can bring our shoulder blades underneath us and then walk your pinky toes out until you can feel the edge, the outer edge of the mat. Your feet stay on the mat, but your pinky toes might just touch the sides of the mat. We're going to rock our knees very slowly side to side, and this is a warm up for the lower back. So rather than us thinking of it as a full twist where we're aiming to get our knees as far towards the ground as possible, just notice what that's like in the hips. Now, keeping your arms into this nice openness, if you're curious of how this is showing up in your hip flexors, you could also take your arms, rather than wings, use the thumbs to press lightly to the top of the thighs. And what you'll feel is the hip flexors slightly engaging as they move side to side. Now, if you woke up and your lower back is tighter, this is just a slow, even movement. And the fingertips can keep pressing into the tops of the thighs if that's a helpful way to connect to the front body, or you could return them back out into those wings because open arms, space between the body parts is going to be coolest for this practice. Now, if the lower back says, yay, you're welcome to start to bring the knees a little further off to each side. And we're simply keeping the knees as far apart as possible. We're going to add another movement here if you'd like, actually a couple of different movements. The in-breath, our knees are at center, and the out-breath, the knees tilt off to a side. And when the knees are tilting to a side, you're welcome to roll your head away to the opposite shoulder. So the knees to the right, the chin to the left shoulder. Knees come to center, head comes to center. Knees to the left, chin to the right. And what we're doing is wringing out the whole spinal column. And you're going to find the range of motion for this eventual spinal twist. If the lower back's still tight, just stay with the earlier knees swaying like they're just blowing in a cool air. They don't have to go very far off to the side. Okay. So we're just going to count backwards at a pace that might match your breath. It might be slower or faster than your breath. Inhale, center, and exhale, sway. 5, inhale, center, exhale, sway. 4, inhale, center, exhale, sway. 3, 2. You're going to go an even amount on each side. And then just let your knees topple over to a side. I'm going to pause from using left or right. If the knees are still feeling like they just want to hang out here, you're going to use a little core, and I'll model that the knees don't go very far off to the side. We're just engaging the core for strengthening. Right? If the lower back's warmed up some and the knees do topple off, what you'll notice is that the knees aren't stacked, because that would be a much warmer pose to have the knees close together. But just let the one knee that's tilted to the opposite side hover over top of the foot that's on the ground. So I'm leaning to the right and the left knee's hovering in space. The other option is just holding the knees there with core engagement. And that is one of the warmer poses we'll do. We're just going to hold here for about 5 breaths. If you're feeling the upper body wanting to enjoy this, you can turn the head away from the direction the knees are hovering. And it will be the honor system that you'll eventually, you'll switch directions without the cue of it being left or right. Will save us the confusion there. Just notice what it's like if you are using core strength and your knee is not touching the ground on the side. You just got 2 more breaths here. And then with abdominal engagement, so we don't strain the lower back, so we bring the knees to center. Pause for a moment. You're also welcome, remembering which side you're going to go to next, we're welcome to briefly squeeze the knees up towards the chest and notice if this helps lengthen the lower back. If you got a hold of the knees or the shins, you're welcome to do that. Beautiful. Thank you, rub of the kneecaps. And if you're very warm from that core engagement, you could reach to where your ice cubes or a high cold pack are. Just hold it in your hand for a breath or 2. Let your hands cool down, because any body part we cool down will help the rest of the body also feel some coolness. Remember which side you twisted towards, that the knees sway or drop off to the second side. If they're hovering, it is a core engagement. So we want to intentionally draw the lower abdominal down in towards the ground, closer to the spinal column. And that is what we're hoping to offer the lower back some care. If the knees are hovering and they do drop off to the side, there's a little less core engagement, and the glute muscle that's on the side we just twisted from is going to come off the ground here. Does your neck and shoulder want to come into the pose? If so, turn away from the direction the knees have gone. And we join briefly Luna in her restful stillness. Yes? Just take about 5 more breaths here. If you're breathing and using the core strength, we still want the lower part of our lung lobes to fill up. It might feel somewhat contradictory that we're engaging abdominal muscles and asking for deep, full lung breaths. Just about 3 more breaths wherever you are is perfect. Excellent. If you have the knees float all the way down, we want to draw the navel in even more so we can center our lower back, bring our head to center as well. Our eyes are looking up to the ceiling. Our knees are pointing to the ceiling. We can then invite the knees up towards your chest. We're inviting the fingertips to either connect or even let the fingers interlace. And now we are squeezing the inner thighs together. And here, with just a little bit of arm support, try and let the lower back relax. You're welcome to circle the knees off to the right, then closer to the chest, then off to the left, then straighten the arms just as far as they'll go. And then Help those knees move in these circles so the lower back gets another way to check in. If you want to go the opposite direction, circle to the left, then to the right. Squeeze in close. 5, 4, 3, 2. That's it. And 1. Beautifully done. And then really what you want to do right there is let the feet land back down to the ground. We're going to check in with the lower back. Does it feel like it's ready for a little more strengthening? If so, we're going to take it through a couple pulses of bridge. If you think you're going to sit that out, you might explore whether you want to offer a hip opening, which is more restorative, letting the knees open up and sealing the feet together. You could place that ice pack between the feet again if you were particularly warm. If you're skipping the bridge pose and you're here in butterfly, you can let one hand rest over the abdomen, one hand rest over the chest. The people that are going to go through bridge will join you here momentarily, just so you can get a head start in reclined restorative butterfly if you wish. If you're going to go through bridge, just want to have the feet so that you can touch your fingertips right at the heels. That pretty much lines up, heels underneath the knees. And the feet are hip distance apart. As we come up, we want to make sure this is both strengthening and stabilizing for the knee joints as well. So if you feel the legs quivering, there's a good chance you want to press into the feet and maybe not lift up as high. Another way to stabilize the body is to bring the elbows in. They almost touch the ribs and then touch down in the triceps. And then we can sway the upper body side to side and walk the shoulder blades in closer. Might feel the chest open. I keep the blanket underneath my head, but you do want to make sure that the chin isn't much lower than the forehead here. And when we lift up into bridge, the shoulder blades and the feet stay on the ground. The back of the head doesn't increase pressure at all. So it's going to be more of a pulsing practice here for strengthening quadriceps, abdominal, glute muscles, and lower back. And press into the elbows, press into the feet. The inhale lifts the lower back up, maybe just a little to try it out. Maybe you come up until you almost feel the tops of the thighs, lengthen the hip flexors, engage. And then as you exhale your breath pace, lower the tailbone down. Nice. Squeeze in the triceps, not any extra weight to the head. Lift up the lower back. Maybe you stay at that earlier height or explore different height. Your exhale, your pace, lower the tailbone down. It's just going to be about a 45-second practice. Your pulse might be slower or faster than what I just described. Maybe more about fully relaxing and taking your time before you start the next one, so that we can tone our body in a very calming and not overheating way. Already 30 seconds in, so that might be just one more pulsing for you. And this is that yogi's choice. If this is feeling like an empowering, slightly warming place in your summer practice, you might hold bridge for just an extra breath or two. And then as you lower the spine down, your last round, let one hand rest over the abdomen, the other hand rest over the chest. You're welcome to let the knees open up, feet come together, and then join the others in butterfly. What you might do in your post-bridge butterfly, though, is shimmy your tailbone side to side and just check in to make sure there's no strain there. This is going to determine whether you proceed into one more strengthening practice. And you check in, the heart rate may have raised a tiny bit, the body temperature may have raised a little bit. If you do have your ice or your ice pack nearby if you want. You could take it and place it right between the two hands, whether you make direct contact with the ice cube or just let it rest there on the mid abdomen. Or a lower hand is touching more like the second chakra right below the belly button. The ice is cooling our power chakra, that solar plexus right below where the ribs and the sternum meet. And then our other hand, the upper hand, is resting on the heart. If you know you're going to skip this next round of bridge and butterfly feels like the place to be, you don't have to move the placement of the ice. If you're coming through a second round of bridge and you want to treat this for balancing, you're welcome to keep your ice or ice pack right there on the sternum. And press the elbows, triceps into the earth. And this time with a cooling quality of that ice and some balance, we're gonna lift on up. And my ice will tip over if I come up much higher. So I want to be very aware of being able to breathe, being able to balance, and hopefully still finding a touch of cooling there right at my solar plexus. If you're feeling any quivering in the quads or any strain anywhere at all, it's an indicator to come out early. Up to 3 more breaths. Maybe that balance became a little bit easier and you increase the gentleness of this power pose. If you've got one more strengthening inhale, be there with it mindfully. Never overstaying your welcome in any pose. As you exhale, lower on down. And do something a little different than with the knees. You can bring the knees slowly up. And the knees might come a little closer to your ice packet or ice pad. And just hug the knees. They might go a little wider than that earlier interlaced finger set. Likewise, if you just came out of butterfly, when you bring the knees together, and then just hover right there over the ribs. We're going to gracefully let that ice be moved away one more time. Now, if you do have ability to let your hand cool off with holding the ice cube or the ice pack, just touch lightly your cooling thing. My ice, oh, it's not fully melted yet. Nice, I still got a couple more ice cubes in there. With your hands somewhat cooler from making contact with the ice, you're gonna scoop the back of the knees, especially if you've got shorts on. See, that's probably the warmest part of the legs right now, the back of the knees, and maybe the hands are cool for just a moment. And then let the hands be squeezed by the back of the knees, transferring any of that coolness from the hands to the back of the knees. Before we come up to seated, we'll just hold here. I know that the warmth has overcome the coolness in the back of my knees. Just twist your head side to side to make sure you did not strain the neck in those bridge poses. And then for a finishing move for the back of the legs, we can move the hands from the underside of the knees into the middle of the hamstrings or maybe upper hamstrings, and just start to lift the heels up. It is okay if the knees stay rather bent, because if we have a tight lower back, there's a good chance that the underside of the legs are also going to feel some of that tautness here. Just going to flex the heels up to the sky. Notice if the air is warmer up there or cooler down here. Just going to press the heels up and then lower the heels down. We support the lower back by keeping the hands on the back of the upper legs. So if you're happy that you're on your yoga mat, just keep your heels up 5 more times. 5, Nice and slow movement. 4, and my countdown doesn't have to be the pace that works for your body. 3, 2, and 1. Lower the feet down. Welcome to hold the hands just on the lower abdomen, both hands there, and gently move the knees side to side. Now, every once in a while, we do some back movements. The lower back is going to give you a feedback loop. Right? If it feels tighter, stay with this a little while longer, just that slow, even sway. Again, we're not trying to lift the lower back off the ground. And I was planning on having this come up to see, but I think since we're here, we'll do one more hip work, which is just a reclined pigeon. We'll take the right ankle and cross it over the left thigh. Now, if you do have, I tend to have cooler feet, but if you do want to take your ice pack and use your hands to cool down your feet even a little bit more here, your right foot, since it's crossed over the left ankle. And then we're going to take the right hand to the inner right knee and nudge the knee forward towards the edge of the front edge of the mat and bring the knee closer to the right ribs. We're just letting that hip socket lean outward and bring it inward. What our hip is doing is just relaxing into the movement. We're not using the muscular effort of the right leg. We're rather using the right hand to move the right knee. And the left hand might supportively hold the right heel, if that's helpful. This is just going to help us find where our hip socket might be collaborating with any of our lower back care today. However far inward and outward that right knee can go, does it feel useful to increase the range of motion, or is there a tightness that you respect and play with the range of motion that's available right now? Never here to effort it into a place that it's not ready to go. But just by letting the right ankle stay over the left thigh, that's more than enough of a hip over. Great if your hands want to interlace behind the warm left knee, and then draw the left knee closer to you. This right foot could be relaxed, toes point off to the side, or flex to the ceiling, which will then increase the outer edge of the right hip and right glute muscle. Similar to our kneeling pigeon pose, but this just gives us a lot more range of motion than when we're lying forward over our right shin. You've got your hands wrapped around the left hamstring. You can again use the arms to help maneuver the legs or the hips in circles. And go in the opposite direction as well. Take a deep breath in and slow the circular movement around. It could be in through the nose and out through that cooling straw breath. I'm going to land the left foot down, uncross the right foot, hands to the lower abdomen. So we remind it's not a full twist. We're just rocking the knees. And then we're going to ease into the left ankle crossing over the right thigh. You want to take your iced hands and try that one more time. Touch your ice cubes or ice pack, and then just lightly massage your left foot. A cooler body part gets a little cooled down. And then your left hand is going to hold the left knee. You can rub it a couple of times to start. Your right hand can hold the left foot, and we just add the left arm guiding the knee inward, pressing the knee outward. Just finding that range of motion that speaks to your hip socket. Pigeon is often one of those places where we get a deeper appreciation for how our hips, even though they may look the same, often have different range of motion. So if we can be compassionate in that comparison, not to judge how one hip socket feels compared to the other, but just rather appreciate the awareness that comes from this movement. And does, by moving the knee inward and outward, help relax the hip socket rather than engage the hip socket. Got that option to then just rest the knee, hovering here and not having to use the arms anymore, or interlace the hands around the right hamstring, relax the right foot. Flex left toes is a little more intense. Relax left toes is a little more relaxed, of course. Bring that right knee up. Use the arm strength to circle around the whole lower part of the body. It's the bicep that curls, knees towards you, and then relax the arms, lengthen. Making sure we're not causing the neck to also feel any strain here. We're just letting the body find a couple of hip movements in one direction. And then inviting to circle in the opposite direction. Excellent. And then you finish up for a slow last movement, lowering the right foot down. Letting those arms rest out, or sorry, rest on the abdomen. Uncross the left leg. To your feet rest. You can walk the feet a little further away. Find the pinky toes touching the outer edges of the mat again. We're just going to rock the knees. See if that sway works well for you, or if indeed the range of motion allows you to add a spinal twist. If the spinal twist works well for you, go one last time with the arms out to the side, palms up, elbows bent, just so we can increase the place where air is flowing around the fingertips. It's a long time to be on our backs, so want to make sure as you sway one more time, side to side, just going to pick a side to roll towards. And we used our back in particular ways here. So as we roll towards the side, let your arms use their leverage, pressing into the ground and stacking the spine up slowly. If there's anything, any questions before we proceed, let me know. Is anyone's back feeling tighter than when we started?
No.
No. Okay. Good. All right. So what we're going to revisit is a stepping down on the ground, the feet. We may end up using some of the calf muscles to ground in. We're just going to scoop our hands underneath the back of the knees and add this as an option to strengthen the core. So the more our feet are grounded, the knees aren't bent so tightly, we've got space between the calves and the hamstrings, and we can hold somewhere the lower hamstrings. I already feel my quads engaged here too. What you want to offer here is holding the back of the legs for support, bringing the heart up, And then exhale, tucking the chin, and notice the elbows pointing out and widening the back of the shoulder blades. Inhale, lift the heart. And exhale, round. If that's too intense for the quad, you can come into a crossed ankle under the same movement by bringing the heart up and rounding the back. So with cross ankles is a little less hip flexor use, and you're tucking and untucking the tailbone. Call these seated cat-cow variations. You continue with either cross-ankled or sealing your feet down version. You might increase the range of motion. Inhale, heart forward, exhale, round. 5, inhale, heart forward, and exhale, round. 4, heart forward, exhale, 3, 2, and 1. Let's pause for a moment, flatten out the legs, and hover over. The forward fold might look really different depending on how the back is feeling. Maybe it's a supported, holding the hands on the front of the shins or the thighs, not pressing down on the knees, and just allowing the chest to lean. If you have a little more space in the hamstrings, you might gradually assist the body in folding forward. Not to effort, not to force, just to notice and relax. Again, over time, the awareness building is, where does the back body want length? Where does it want rest? So this is actually as tall as we're going to get today. We're not coming up to any standing poses. If you decide to do one more round of seated core strengthener, you're welcome to come up and step those feet to the ground again. One option is to just hold the back of the knees, keep your feet to the ground, and lean back as far as the abdominal and back wants to offer a flat back. The other is full boat pose, which can be still built in sections. One is to lift a leg and keep the other foot to the ground. That's going to ask the core and the quads to engage, lowering the foot, and then for one breath at a time, switching out legs. Yes. And of course, if you want to add it all together, it could be the next several breaths with both legs lifted. So those are your options. One is both feet are anchored. The other is alternating by breath. And the other is to hold both legs up without compromising the lift in the heart. Now you can use some of the arm strength to support you here. That's why the hands would stay underneath the knees. When you feel anything, this is the pose where I know that my hamstrings feel really engaged, but the quads are doing most of the work. Anytime you feel quivering, that's an indicator in a yoga practice. You want to lower the feet and then just come into a rest. I'm sneaking in some of the warming core strengthenings here. You test run to see whether one was enough. Or do you want to try one more round? Holding the back of the knees and floating the heart forward. That's one option. Lifting one leg per breath is the other option. Keeping your roots, your sits bones into the ground, heart lifted, maybe both feet lift a little or a lot. Using the arms, they hold, and then the grand finale could be setting sail where the arms leave, the hands leave the back of the legs for 5. Any of these versions are fine. For 4. If you can smile and breathe deeply, you're in the right place. For 3. For 2. Let's all let our boat, whatever variation was, land the feet. Bring the heart close to the knees as possible. This is the closest you can get to your kneecap. So maybe you blow them A gentle kiss, thanking them for all they are able to do. If you did any of those boat poses, you want to open up the knees to the side and just squeeze your thumbs into the tops of those hip flexors. That was a pretty intense place for them. We're going to do one round of seated twists. So I would invite you to consider sitting up upon the blanket, maybe the block in the blanket as well. The first setup version is simply crossing, and I will use right, left here, crossing the right ankle in front of the left. We'll switch sides eventually. The other was to bring the right foot to the ground, scoot it in closer to the left shin, or bring your right ankle across to the outer left knee or thigh. Holding here, if you're in this variation, the right glute muscle is a little taller, so it might feel challenging to keep the spine tall without rounding. With the hold of the left arm around the right knee, we can cross the right hand back behind us. If you're sitting right ankle in front of left, it's a very modified version where your left hand can cross to the right knee and your right fingertips back behind you. Lift up through the top of the head, add the twist looking past the right shoulder. Once again, back care involves modifying when you feel too much of a twist. Bring the head out of it a little bit. You need a deeper twist. First, push down into the glutes, the sits bones, lift the top of the head, and then add your twist. 3 more breaths here. In through the nose, perhaps that little straw cooling breath out with the lips. 1 more breath. As you start your exhale, top of the head, unwind, shoulders, mid, back, lower back, come back to center, and you can just crisscross, briefly look to the left. However your legs are situated, keep them as they are. And as we unwind, we'll sit for just a moment. We'll switch out leg position momentarily. It's also a time, because if you're using straw breath for cooling, it sometimes can dry the mouth. So before we go to the second side, might be a time where you take a sip of cool herbal tea or water. If you did the cross ankle position, you simply want to bring left leg in front of right. If you did the left knee up, just want to, the left foot comes into the right shin or close to the top of the ankle, and or perhaps steps it left foot to the outside of the right thigh. This variation of a twist, hold your right elbow around the left knee, the left glute muscle lifts up. We still try to maintain a tall spine. Crisscrossing your left hand to behind the body. So when you look up and over the left shoulder, there's this kickstand. The fingertips are there to support you. Breathe into the top of the head, and that's going to help us find the right amount of twist. We also complement that earlier pigeon pose by letting the outside of our left hip joint and left glute muscle feel supportively held as we twist. Take 3 more breaths, admiring the restful, peaceful Luna's pose of the day. You feel your twist increasing in length. The breath may follow. For unwinding the spine, we want to start. The easiest thing to move is the head, the neck, then the shoulders, mid, lower back. Then, however your legs are positioned, keep them as they are. Counter twist to the right. With that gentle twist, we still maintain a tall upward movement and rotation of the right shoulder. Look past the right. And then again, unwind from the top of the head down the spine. Come back to center. You're welcome to sit cross-angled left leg over right just for a moment. If indeed you did the whole setup for cooling, you probably have a somewhat melted bit of ice, or your ice packet might be sweating a little bit. You're more than welcome to either keep those there for later use, but you're invited to now go to your freezer if you put your wet wash towel there and retrieve it. Right back. You happen to have to walk a long distance to get it. Take your time. Jenny, you came prepared, huh?
Well, no, I have my ice pack.
And it's still cold enough, right?
Yeah. Oh,
Excellent.
yeah.
Now, I know for some of you with lower back, this final back bend is something you want to skip altogether, and you're just going to find a Shavasana for early head start. If your lower back wants any kind of arch or release, you might fold the blanket. You could even make it a little bit flatter by opening it up, or you could double it up so it's more of a rectangular shape. Welcome back, Vicky. And you could then allow yourself to sit right in front. Keep your ice pack or your crisp washcloth available. Lie down to see if your back wants any participation in a back bend. It's okay if it chooses not. However you start out, you might just let the knees lean into each other, the feet a little wider. Determine if that blanket is going to stay there or it's already decided it's not going to be part of the picture. And then you're invited to take your crisp, somewhat crusty ice washcloth and rest it perhaps on the forehead if that's too much direct contact, even over clothed shirt, like right at the collarbone is a great place to start. Another place that some people are able to manage is right at the abdomen. And then you're going to determine, you could always change your location for this cool towel or ice pack. You might decide to revisit butterfly, bringing the soles of the feet together. The other place you can place your cool pack is to perhaps squeeze it one more time between the feet. The crispy wash towel is particularly cold. So find the position that cold prop might be useful for you. Find a position where your lower back is going to be happy for the next couple of minutes. With that in mind, I'm going to sing the bowls for a short while. There it is. Changed it so that the echoing of the bowls does not reverberate in any uncomfortable way. If you get into a pose that feels great in the moment but builds or changes in intensity, please modify and come out at any time. If you're prone to want to do another form of finishing practice, adjust and have that self-guided time. Breathe into whatever sensation you feel where that ice cold prop might be placed. In the midst of this summary, hopefully strengthening, grounding, and occasionally cooling practice, I share with you these words by Yoko Ono as you just breathe into your Shavasana or finishing pose a little while longer. Spring passes and one remembers one's innocence. Summer passes and one remembers one's exuberance. Autumn passes and one remembers one's reverence. Winter passes and one remembers one's perseverance. My hope is as you take a couple of breaths into whatever brought you to the yoga mat today, you're welcome to extend your Shavasana time. If you are joining in a pre-recorded class, thank you for checking it out. If you stayed with me while we're recording this, I'm going to close down the recording so we can do a check-in. Thank you, everybody, and namaste.